The purpose of Rosicrucian instruction and the practice of Rosicrucian principles is to give greater freedom to the expression of this self within, and to train the outer self to give greater credence to what the inner self inspires, while at the same time break down the general superiority complex which the outer self has gradually made for itself in its false beliefs in the integrity and dependability of worldly impressions and worldly reasoning. There is a common mistake made by new students on the path of mysticism to the effect that the idea of mystical study and mystical practice is to awaken the still small voice of conscience, or to enliven the activities of the master within, to such a degree that the functionings of this inner self will dominate over the outer self by its superior power and superior methods. This reasoning leads to the false conception of a constant contest between the inner self and the outer self for control of our conduct in life. Proceeding in this manner to be victorious in the attainment of real mastership, the misinformed student struggles vainly to maintain the outer objective worldly power of his objective, worldly consciousness, while hoping and praying for an increasing power in the inner self that will overrule the outer self on occasions when the inner self believes it necessary to seize hold of the individual's conduct and thinking. Little or no success in the attainment of mastership is gained by this method. It is not until the outer self begins to humble its arbitrary position in life and voluntarily submits itself to complete guidance on the part of the inner self that real progress is made toward mastership. It is not true that the perfect attitude to take is the one of enslaving the outer self to the inner self, or to look upon the two forms of consciousness as that of master and slave. Perhaps the term master within is responsible for this idea. The outer self is not to be enslaved at any time by any power within or without. It should, however, be forced to assume its proper relative position in respect to the duality of man's consciousness and being. In childhood and in all normal phases of psychological functioning of life, the inner self is the guiding factor and guiding power, and the indisputable autocrat of the human personality. In fact, it is the very seat of personality and individuality, and while the outer self should not be a slave to the inner self, it should be in the position of being a willing and happy servant to the dictates of the inner self. It is through the guidance of this inner self, and through its dependable messages, its inspiring impulses, and its whisperings of warning that we are able to guide our lives correctly, meeting the problems of life with a superior power of understanding, overcoming the obstacles with a never-failing solution, and attaining the goal of our desires through a correct leadership. And in addition to this, the mystic finds that through the humble and friendly attunement of the outer self with the self within, the immediate communion with God, the close companionship with the Father of all beings, and the comprehension of all divine principles are made possible.